Welcome to the fourth installment of the Money Act podcast, where we talk about money and movies and games. And today we are talking to Jason Hayes, who is a world-renowned composer. I worked with him at our last company. He's a multiple award winner for huge titles that you've probably heard of, StarCraft, World of Warcraft, Diablo, just to name a few. I feel like I'm doing our pitch session again, where we talk about your section. But Jason, welcome to the program. Really happy to have you, and thanks so much for doing this for us.
Ryan, I am really honored to be here, and thanks for inviting me. This is really cool. So yeah, I'm excited to be part of it.
Awesome. Why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. I've been a composer for video games for over 20 years. Basically, before I ever started in games, I was writing jingles. So, like radio ads to help promote companies, which is a hard road to hoe, actually. But I was doing that locally. And I got my start originally at Sierra Online. So I moved from Louisiana, where I was located, and we moved to Oakhurst, California, to work for Sierra Online. So they haven't made games in a while, but they were a big deal back in the day, making games like King's Quest and Space Quest. And so I was lucky to be involved with that company as a music composer. And I was there for a while. And then I went from there to getting hired at Blizzard Entertainment, which was a huge seismic shift in my life, because I went to go work for that company, and they were making some of the best video games on the planet. And I felt really lucky to be hired as the #2 guy. When I got hired, there's only Glenn Stafford, who was doing sound design, music composition, and voice directing. And he hired me to be his right-hand man. And I'm still friends with Glenn to this day. And I got to see Blizzard through many eras of their existence. Yeah. So I was fortunate, eventually the first game I worked on was the original game StarCraft that was released in 1998. And then, over the years, I worked on all their titles, and I got to be the lead music composer of the game World of Warcraft in its first release. And that's been the gift that keeps on giving, being involved with this amazing franchise. This billion-dollar franchise.
Huge one, yeah.
I've been really fortunate to be involved with them, and now I get the enjoyment of having people that write music and do a little tour of duty on World of Warcraft that'll contact me and say, "Hey, man, I took this theme that you wrote for Arthas, and I did this kind of new thing with it, and check it out." And I get to have this vicarious collaboration with all kinds of composers that might use my themes in a cool way. And so I've been able to work on the game off and on over the years, and plus vicariously collaborate with a lot of composers that have taken some of the themes and used them, which is always a real kick.
Now, did that translate to the film as well?
Yes, it did, but only a little bit. The film, when it came out, I was really hoping I could get involved.
Yeah.
I asked the then president at the time for a long time, Mike Morheim. I said, "Man, can I just kind of get involved some way with this film, because I would really love to do it?" And he goes, "You know what? We can put your name in the hat, but it's really a Legendary Pictures production, and we don't really have a lot of say on that." And so the way it ended up happening is they used, when you enter Stormwind, which is one of the capital cities in World of Warcraft for the Alliance faction, when you enter Stormwind in the movie, they quote my theme, which I love that. That was great. It wasn't my version of it. It was Ramin. He did the take on it, but it says, Stormwind on screen, and you hear a version of the theme. And so that was kind of nice. And then, for the end credits, they play the movie theme, but then they come in, they do the video game theme that I wrote for the game, and that's in the credits. So it's just a couple of little nods. And, I know who my good friends are. They waited through the entire credits of that movie so they could see like those song credits at the end. And I'm featured credit there at the end of the credit roll. But only my really good friends would have the patience to wait through all that. But I got some screenshots of the credits in the movie. So
that's awesome.
I was glad to be involved. And, the thing is, I've seen that movie more than once, because it got panned so badly, and I was really thinking this needs another view. And I've seen it a couple times, and I can see what Duncan Jones was going for, but it was trying to bite off a lot in one movie. I mean, there's years and years of Warcraft history that they were trying to hint at an origin story, and that was didn't succeed as well as just telling one good story would be better than trying to set up this entire, big origin. But that's
Right.
okay.
So how does that work as far as you mentioned other people take your themes and then sort of build on that? Um, how does that work as far as credits? Obviously, you got credit in the movie, but how does that work as far as do they take like certain like you've got like a certain amount of notes that resemble that creates this iconic sound, and then they build on it? How much of that do they have to build on to sort of make it their own in a way? Do you know what I'm saying?
It's neat. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I've had an interesting ride of being involved with that a lot over the years. And in some ways, it's really satisfying and kind of flattering and it's smart, because there was a lot of wanting to take certain signature themes and use them in a variety of ways. And so a lot of composers have touched those themes. And I think it's great because it builds a feeling of continuity, which is very nice. For a long time, I wasn't getting credited at all. And I'd hear things pop up and be like, oh, wow, that is basically a quote of, a theme that I wrote for Arthas
Right.
or a theme that I wrote for Illidan. And, but, over the years, they've eventually gotten better about it, because now they'll release a soundtrack for expansion to WoW, World of Warcraft. And I'll find that I'm credited, say, plus we're using classic themes by Jason Hayes. So I'm appreciative that it took a while, but now we're seeing that being credited a bit. It's not a big deal, right? It's like it's nice to be a part of this franchise and have involvement. And then even if I know it, it's cool, but it's good that the company has now gotten a lot better about crediting that stuff. And and I am always very delighted to find out how stuff is used in ways that I maybe don't even expect, and it's cool.
And rightfully so. Yeah, you're the foundation of those iconic sounds. So it actually kind of takes me into, excuse me, a similar story I have, where my senior film in college was a documentary on a composer.
Oh, and, wow! What composer?
His name's Eric Funk. He's travels all over the world, composing, conducting his music, and Montana guy. So not a whole lot of people know him, but it was an incredible story because he basically, traveling all over the world, doing his own music, but then he had this illness that impacted him, like couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't hear music anymore. Mitochondrial encephalomyopathy with lactic acidosis and stroke-like episodes. It's still in my mind from, over 20 years ago, because you're in the editing bay playing that, over and over again.
You spent a lot of time with that term, but that is quite a
it was heavy for him. Completely changed his life. And the worst thing about, even though he couldn't walk, couldn't talk, anything, the worst thing for him was that he couldn't hear music in his head anymore. And he was wheelchairing himself down the road and in Montana, and icy road, and he all of a sudden heard 6 notes in his head, and it was like instantly he was like, I can do something with this, and he got it down, and all of a sudden it was just like the floodgates burst open, and he started writing music again. He could talk again. He could walk again. It's very bizarre. And now he's, back to his old, obviously not his old self, because that experience changes you, but, huge impact. But the reason I bring that up, and the reason it sort of segued into that, is because we're talking about these themes that make up these iconic pieces of music. And like John Williams, you hear Star Wars theme and, you immediately go to that film, or Indiana Jones, or any of these big, movie compositions, that take you there. What is it about a music piece? Is it 6 notes? Is it a compilation of you know, a set of notes that puts together this, you know, because most of my audience is visual because we come from visual effects, having done no sound. I haven't done sound since college. You can see with our setup, I'm struggling with this thing before we started recording. But what is it that makes up like an iconic theme for?
You know what? I'll tell you what. It's really hard to quantify. Absolutely, it's a situation where, you know, a lot of times, and I mean, to even compare, right? John Williams is a national treasure, right? I mean, it's like it's amazing. But I feel lucky to be involved in music for the things I've been involved with, and you know, a theme is an interesting thing. It's can it be elusive? It's something where I have to go out and go for like get away from all the gear and get away from even the piano, and I walk and I think about a character or a situation, and I try to come up with what might be a good description, a good melody. And this kind of thing, I feel very grateful anytime a thematic idea comes to me. It's not, you know, it's a situation where a lot of times I get it from a meeting with a cinematic director at Blizzard, and he would be telling me the story that he wanted to tell. And, you know, I'm looking at a really early version of like an animatic, right? Something where it's like, this is not pretty to look at. You know, I mean, Blizzard is really well known for their CGI, for their wonderful animation. It's fantastic. But I look at it in a state that was really early, and the director would say, hey, we have this guy, you know, Illidan, and he's going to be a major force installment of the game. And so this is Illidan, and I'd be looking at like a cylinder on screen, and like with nothing else going on. It was just like the most broad shapes. But he said, this is a close-up of his face, and you're going to see this guy. And immediately I'm thinking like, oh my goodness, you know, he's describing these giant horns that he's going to have. And, you know, the visual doesn't look like it, but I can imagine this big close-up with a big horned guy named Illidan. And so then I'll just like leave the room, and I'll be like, just give me 1 second. And I'd just walk out of the room, and I'd hum an idea into a recorder. It used to be a little mini cassette recorder, but now I use the voice app on the phone, and I'll sing in an idea, and then I'll go back into the room and say, hey, sorry about that. I just wanted to jot something down really quick. And you know, sure enough, that idea that was inspired just by his description of Illidan, it gave me a little snippet of the melody for him. And it ended up being that way in the final movie. It's like when he comes on screen, he looks super imposing, and it's a giant horns and a big old guy, and that theme comes in, and you know, it was great because it introduced the character, and then now years later they'll do an expansion. You know, that movie was for like Warcraft 3. It was like the first introduction of Illidan, and then they've got like, you know, the WoW expansion years later for Legion features Illidan, and sure enough, when you start the opening movie, you're going to hear a little hint of like, oh my goodness, that's his motif, that's his theme. And people immediately, before they even knew it was Illidan, they can recognize, oh, that's that character, that's Illidan. And that's really so cool. Neat, especially if I'm not directly involved with it, but maybe another composer or another director is making that thing, but they weave that in. And it's great to have that sonic signature, and it tells you immediately who the character is. And it's great when something like
that's interesting. Yeah. You know? So it really is like this almost musical visual you get in your head that it just speaks to you, and you're able to kind of put it together. Like, was it something from your childhood? Like, did you grow up with music and that's why you're able to kind of piece these things, or were you just naturally inclined to music, or how did that work?
I was really involved. I had an uncle that was a huge audiophile. He lived in a pretty basic kind of a trailer situation. It was not very fancy, but he had the most expensive, these Infinity Kappa 9 speakers, these really expensive, really wonderful speakers. And I remember I would listen to music in his trailer for hours because it sounded so good. And I would listen to Beethoven, and some of this music was just like so, I mean, so vivid to hear an orchestra with that level of detail. And so, or it could be popular music. I just love to listen to all kinds of things at his place. And so I made spent a lot of time listening to music. And I remember being interested to figure out, how does this work? This is just like, I find this really evocative. And, I was young. I didn't know really how to play piano. I didn't know anything. But I remember I really wanted to like unlock what I thought was so captivating, which is this wonderful music. And yeah, there's something awesome about hearing something, where you have basically dim lighting and amazing speakers. It's like, it's incredible. So yeah, I spent a lot of time at this place listening to music.
That pretty much shaped you in your career in a way. Like
it did.
Yeah.
It was that. And another thing that happened was really instrumental was I went to a friend's house and he actually had a gadget. It was like a hardware device and he showed it to me. It was called like a sequencer, and he could play in a few notes and then press play, and then those notes would come back from his keyboard, and you get like a recording, but it was a malleable recording. And so I thought, that's like the coolest thing in the world. So I figured out, the Grim Grinning Ghosts Haunted Mansion theme from Disneyland.
Nice. Which just happened to come out in the theater.
You're right. So I knew that theme. I kind of plucked it out, and okay, I said, wow, I can play it back. And then I got to start it again, and then bump, 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 play little chords in the background. So all of a sudden I play them both together, and I got it's like, wow, this is coming to life in front of my eyes with this hardware sequencer. That's exactly how I work on stuff today with music. Is just playing one part at a time and kind of build your arrangements. And but I knew at the time that was like, this is so much fun, and it would be amazing to actually be able to do this, as my work. So it's exactly
and you must be amazed, like I am, like what you can do with your laptop now. What you needed all these pieces of equipment for, back in the day. Now it's like all on your laptop. Even a kid with GarageBand or something on their Mac could play around with this kind of stuff.
You can do a staggeringly amount of high production stuff with a really, by today's standards, pretty simple setup. A simple laptop or a PC, you can do a lot for sure. And for years, I was doing things that way, where I was doing it all arrangements, trying to simulate the sound of an orchestra or simulate the sound of a band, and I would play each part in, not knowing that eventually we'd start seeing some budgets. We'd be able to do live recordings, and I'd be able to record live orchestra. And there's something really incredible about actually going into a room and having maybe like 86 people that are all super trained, amazing musicians, all lending themselves and their talents to bringing your music to life is a real cool thing.
I bet. And speaking of that, I was so looking forward. That was going to be like the highlight of my career, to go in with you to Skywalker Sound and see that live orchestra. We just talked about John Williams, where he recorded Star Wars and all these other iconic movies with you to conduct this orchestra piece. And it's a bummer that last company fell apart, but talk about, because I know you've done it before at Skywalker Sound, talk about that experience, because when you talked to me about it, it was just like, the childhood, why I got into film. I'm like, oh my God, that just sounds amazing.
It's really neat. And it's something where it's like, hey, don't give up hope, because your chance we might end up on that scoring stage
that's
together.
True. Yes, I hope so.
Because I'm looking forward to doing it again. And no, it's a really cool place. I mean, George Lucas has built this amazing facility on lots and lots of land out there. And so, when it looks as if it's been there like a long time, because it has a weathered look, but that's all part of the design. It's actually made to look that way. It's like you're going on to what's essentially almost like a movie set, because it's been designed to look kind of weathered, but it's a charming location. And there's the main house, and if you're lucky, you might spot George Lucas walking around there, because he'll sometimes be there, right? That's the place that he built. And or like when I was there before, I heard, oh, Brad Bird was there, working on a film, and I was like kind of geeking out, because I'm a huge fan of Incredibles and the Iron Giant.
I got to meet him actually.
Are you serious?
Rhythm and he is,
He seems like he might be a really cool guy, but is he a cool? Maybe don't.
He is. He's really cool.
Oh, good.
Really cool. Really straightforward. Just wants to, no BS. Really cool
There's
guy. Yeah.
there's a time when I was going to possibly get lunch with him because I had a friend who was working on the film with him. But I was like, what am I going to tell Brad Bird? You know,
Yeah.
it's like I'm just going to just say, oh, I'm a big fan of, I don't know
Yeah.
what. But no, that's awesome that you met him.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
so it's a special place because you have all kinds of interesting people that could be walking around on any day of the week.
Totally.
And but it's also great because it can be stressful recording an orchestra. You've got a lot of people on the payroll, and the time is really important. So, you need to get the take that you need to get with the orchestra. And if time runs out, then you're kind of in trouble, or you have to pay for like overtime, which would be extremely expensive.
Right.
But they make it a really pleasurable environment to be in. So even though it can be a little stressful, they do everything they can to make it really a wonderful
You were saying
experience.
it's like a hotel. They have bikes you can like cruise
Yeah.
around in on the property.
Yeah,
Really cool.
it's great. It's like, the inn that they have there is so cool because I knew that my wife would appreciate it a lot more than me because she is a fan of, that kind of shabby chic and the decor. And so I got to take her there and she definitely got a real kick out of it. All the rooms in the inn are named after people that George Lucas admires or knows. And so, I think we were staying one time at the Dorothy Ferguson room. And they're different rooms and they're all appointed and really cute. And, when you need to get around, you just grab a bicycle and you can kind of go through the hills, riding down maybe the swing stage where you're recording an orchestra or, down this other area. It's a really, really special, enjoyable place to hang out. And so, when you're there, you might be there for like maybe a week or something because you're doing all these dates. And it's a fun environment to record in for sure.
Very cool.
It's like a working vacation.
Right, totally. And how do you get the whole orchestra? I imagine you don't have a lot of time with them to get prepped for your music. Like, do they get the sheets of music well beforehand, practice on their own, and then come together? Or how does that work?
This is the reality of the recording situation. When you're going to record a live orchestra, you're putting this music in front of them. All this preparation goes into making sure that music's ready. But when they're going to play it, they're singing it for the first time. So they're literally playing it down. Now, some of these players are like the best in the world, right? And so if the players are playing all the time because they're working a lot, then they really are some of the best because they can read this music down. If you need something different because maybe, I need to be louder here or I need this to be, you can do other takes and you have to, do that. But there are times where you feel it because you're like, well, I really need another take on that. But it's like, is there enough time for that or not?
Gotcha.
I know one time we had a scary situation. They had the whole orchestra had the previous day done an entire concert performance of Lord of the Rings. And there's a lot of screaming brass in Lord of the Rings. And so the first trumpet player was pretty much blown out. And so with brass, it's like, you have a certain amount of time with certain kind of material you can play. And then it's hard, it messes up your armature to be able to play. So the first trumpet player was having a challenge. And so we had a real issue on the date because I had the contractor with me and trying to figure out how can we deal with this because this is a wonderful player, but he worked too hard last night at the concert. And so we had to switch around the first trumpet part with the second trumpet part. And then it was all fine. And it was, and worked beautifully. But that was a scary moment because, to switch those parts around, was something where it's like, we didn't want to like insult anyone or anything. It's like, but he was happy. He's like, this is good because it's like, obviously someone else needs to take over this harder part. And it went great. But, things like that, decisions you have to make on the fly, wouldn't be difficult except that the clock is ticking and you're like, we only have a certain amount of time to get this done. But it worked out fine and they did a great job. And the contractor was very super professional about it and did a great job. So,
Right. And do you have a producer with you to kind of keep everybody on schedule, I assume?
Oh, yes. Yeah. There's the music contractor who hires the entire orchestra. And in this case, she was also playing flute in the orchestra, but she was the one keeping track of time. And she'll let you know, say, we got 10 more minutes till a break. There's very specific times you have to make sure you're giving breaks to the
They're
players.
unionized, right? So you
Yeah,
have
it's
to
all
hit,
union.
yeah,
Exactly. So it's all very much, you have to, hit all those marks. And no, it's for a good reason. You have to make
yeah,
sure that you don't want to, be a slave driver. You
yeah,
want to make
totally,
sure,
yeah. There's
it's
just no
all,
like, hey, just give us 5 more minutes and then we'll have a longer break or something. It's you've got to hit those
you hit the
marks.
exact times.
Yeah,
Exactly. And there's a good reason for it, but yeah, it can add to the stress. But if there's
sure,
someone there who's keeping the watch and really keeping track of it, and there
right,
usually is, it helps save you because you can make sure that you're doing all the right things by the union rules and stuff.
right,
But
yeah,
I found that, I mean, you can have a great time making music with great musicians, and they're doing this for a reason. Of course,
hmm,
it's a payday, but
sure,
it's a fun thing to make music all together. And yeah, you just want to be really respectful of all these people that put lots of blood, sweat, and tears into becoming amazing musicians, and I always feel lucky to be working with them. So it's a
of
great
course.
experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Well, what do you think about? I think I feel like I bring up AI in every single one of these
How
podcasts
can you
because
not, man? This is
it's the latest, greatest thing, and scariest thing. Um, we were sort of dabbling with voice acting a little bit, and I think a lot of people, worry that this is going to take jobs away and stuff like that. Where and maybe to a certain extent, but I think a lot of AI just kind of helps creators get there quicker. Do you feel that way with the voice acting piece, where you could, we're just coming up with even if the script's still being written, at least you can get some things down with a robot voice at first, and then when you've got it nailed, you can go, record a real person. What
Yeah,
do you? Yeah.
I had a funny experience at one of the conventions where we were like, this was the Game Developers Conference, and I was checking out the latest technology. This was like last year, and it was something that was supposed to give you an automated voiceover, and you put in the text, and they get the voice back. And I was surprised because there weren't a lot of levers to pull to change the performance. And so I
Mm,
would think, like, as someone who wants to like get the thing I want to hear, I would want to be able to pull the levers, say, well, this should be sadder, or this should be this.
mm,
There was surprisingly little in terms of a way to fine tune it. Now, I mean, there you could do certain things, but I remember he wanted me to do this little game where I was going to tell him whether it was like, was this recording a real person or is this
no,
like a
right,
synthetic? And he was
yeah,
playing examples of it, and I don't know if it was just like a game he was playing where it was like he was being facetious, but I
yeah,
mean, every time I could tell the thing that was like kind of fake.
pretty obvious, yeah,
And it wasn't that the voice sounded fake. The voice sounded pretty realistic, but you could hear little artifacts. There's little kind of not super noticeable, but little things about the voice that
mm,
sounded that little element of artifice.
right,
And people could maybe have that thing happen and hear it and say, that sounds kind of like a normal person pretty well at first blush. But like I said, without the ability to kind of like really control the performance, I thought, well, this can't really be useful except that maybe just for very temp. And for that, it
right.
can be super
And
useful.
temp's great, yeah,
Yeah. But then again, things are changing out from under us like really fast. And so who knows?
mhm,
I mean,
that's
I
true.
heard a fake conversation between like the late Steve Jobs
Hmm.
and the famous podcaster. Uh, who's the one that has the
Like Joe Rogan,
yeah, it was like a
yeah,
fake conversation between the two of them, and
uh,
they were carrying on a whole thing. It was all completely fake, and I was
right,
like, well, that gives you pause. I mean, the
yeah,
fact that that can be done, it was pretty convincing, and it was
yeah.
so it's
And then they have
disturbing.
the deep fake with the completely manipulate the face, which is still pretty obvious.
Yeah, but
If
the
you pay
deep fake thing,
attention,
come on, it's like he takes something like Tom Cruise, and it's like
yeah,
people will be thinking that's Tom
it,
Cruise
yeah, it's
talking
like that.
nonsense and playing golf in that clip. Yeah,
It's like that Schwarzenegger movie, Running Man in the '80s,
yeah.
where they deep faked the. I think it was a wrestler. I haven't seen that movie since the '80s, but
Wow.
I remember seeing that scene, going, oh, that's pretty science fiction. But here we are, really being able to fake events that may not actually happen. It's pretty cool. I mean,
This is pretty early
that's
on,
pretty
but
scary.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
we're
they had
there.
one guy, because the thing that they needed to do at the early days of this deep fake, which is all pretty early days, but
Yeah.
it's like you got to have someone to do the voice impression because they can simulate the look of the people. But it was really a good job with a really talented impersonator, and he was going through 5 or 6 different characters, and the face would morph and change into
Right.
these different actors, and it's amazing. Like it was pretty convincing. And it's
Yeah.
like, man, it's like people gotta think it's Morgan Freeman. It's not
Right.
Morgan
Totally. Yeah.
Freeman. So yeah,
Exactly.
it's equally scary and kind of exciting at the same time.
Right. Right. Now you had a friend that did like NFT'd her music and
Yeah.
tokenized it. And I know you dabbled with it a little, and I know you don't know a whole lot about it, and neither do I. But but I do feel like it is something that, because we all of our entertainment now, for the most part, is digitized, and they're literally digital assets.
Yes.
It'll be difficult, more difficult, but I think it's possible to tokenize real assets, and they're doing it with real estate already. Um, did she have success with it at all? And
Yeah. My
yeah.
friend's Tina Guo. Tina Guo is a very talented cello player, and
Mm,
she had done some visual art pieces that were, kind of her art pieces. And I don't know if she drew them or not, but it's about her, and she's very good at social media. She's very good at
mhm.
having, a very active presence, and she has success. She successfully sold some NFT, 1 or 2 of them, and she's got a whole series she's doing now.
Mm,
And yeah, she's really impressive with that. And I remember asking her, I said, "Well, how in the world did you do this?" She goes, "Well, you know what you
yeah.
need to do? You just got to go out there and take the NFT that you minted and attach it to the various projects that you've worked on. These are very well known projects, but you just need to get that crowd of people that are interested in those things you worked on to see it." And she
Mhm.
that's all that she did. She just got the right kind of channels looking at it and stuff. And so,
Right.
but yeah, now she's been basically touring with Hans Zimmer recently for
Oh
his
wow.
concert tour. Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
and she's really good. I mean, she's yeah. I've got this band that plays video game music and called Critical Hit. And before the pandemic, we were
Awesome.
pretty active with it. And so I called up. She was the first person I called because she's played on a lot of scores that I've written, and a lot of my colleagues, she's played on their scores. And so she's a known commodity as a fantastic performer. And I thought she'd be great in this band, and she'd be interested. And she was. And so she's done a lot of shows with us, and she's terrific.
Oh,
And then
cool.
I've called up several other players that are all terrific musicians to be in the band. And so we've had some success.
So
Um,
truly getting the band back together, like
that's
literally.
right. Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. We had a good relationship with Wizard World Comic Con. They brought us out to lots of shows all over the country, and that was fun. And this same band has brought us to Australia for the Supernova convention, and
Awesome.
even brought our band to Poland for the Krakow Film Music Festival. So yeah, now the pandemic hit and everything kind of slowed down,
Yeah,
but
it just
we're
made it come
excited
together.
about doing it again, and
That's
maybe
great.
working again with Tina and others. Hopefully be playing again because it's a really fun, just a side project for me. But wow, what a great experience to go out there and play live music and stuff is a really fun
That's
experience.
great. Yeah. Well, it's all about marketing. So if you ever get like a website or something together for your band, shoot it to me, and I'll throw it on the show notes of this
Oh, I'll do
episode.
it. Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, it's neat. And we
Yeah.
got some fun videos. We had done a set of videos, and we got our album release, which people are still asking when we do the second album, and we probably will at some point. But right now, it's just the volume one album.
Nice. Nice. Well, you've got a big event coming up soon, right? You're going to China to uh, conduct, and your daughter with you as well. She's singing.
Yeah, it's really great. I've been asked to go to China. We're going to be doing shows in Beijing and Shanghai and Wuhan with orchestras in those areas. So for 2 weeks, at the very beginning of September, I'll be going to conduct all Blizzard music. It'll be A few of the concerts will be all Blizzard games, including like some Overwatch and some
Hmm.
StarCraft and of course World of Warcraft. And then some of the concerts will be all World of Warcraft music. But yeah, one of the coolest things about it is, in addition to getting to conduct these orchestras, I get to have my 19-year-old daughter come. Taylor is going to be the featured vocalist singing on stage with these orchestras, and
Awesome.
she's really excited about it.
Very
She's a
cool.
great singer, and
She
unlike
got
her
the voice
dad,
from your wife, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
Unlike her dad, she doesn't have stage fright. You know, I'm gonna be petrified up
Okay.
there. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, they're gonna love her. She's a terrific vocalist. I think it'll be really fun.
Oh, that's amazing. And when does that happen? Next month or two?
We leave on August the 29th. We fly out,
Cool.
and so we'll be there for the first 2 weeks of September.
Oh, amazing. And if they film that or anything and have a link to it, send it to me and I'll throw it on the notes as well, because that'd be cool.
It could happen. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe we'll get some kind of footage from one of the concerts or something. It's happened before, so maybe. So if we get it, I would love to link it up for sure.
Very cool. What is your favorite film or game of all time?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've always been a big fan of adventure games. Like when I first started in the industry, it was like, that's why I was drawn to Sierra Online because they did these adventure games.
Uh-huh.
So in recent years, there's this studio called Quantic Dream, and they've done some very much like interactive movie kind of games. There's a game called Detroit Become Human that they did, and it's a really good story, and it's got great music. They use like three different composers because there's three main characters, and so they follow these characters around, and each composer got to do a certain aspect of the music. And I think it's a great score. It's a really really good game. It has a surprising amount of agency you experience. You think like a story-driven game, you're on the rails. You're going to go from the beginning to the end, which is fine because I love a good story. But they thought of a lot of scenarios where you can pretty much have main characters like die off and the game continues, or you could maybe choose to do things that are kind of like not very nice, but the game continues with that impacting the events.
Uh-huh. Oh,
And
very
so
cool.
it's really satisfying. You feel like it really invites you to maybe play the game more than once. You can experience all the different ways.
That choose your own adventure type of thing.
Yeah. So I love that. I mean, back in the day, I really loved the Walking Dead video game. I mean, this is like the Telltale series. It's like I thought it was just so evocative and again, great story. And that game works with a lot of like dialogue trees. You're answering questions of characters that ask you things and you answer them. You think that'd be a boring mechanic, but they make it really exciting because sometimes they time you. You only have like a few seconds to answer.
Uh-huh.
And so they have some great moral dilemmas in that game. And they also have the situation where, a character will like catch you lying. Say, I remember when you said this. She said she was like your daughter, but she's just some stranger you met, along the way. So, but you're flustered, because you're timed and you have to. So it's a very clever game. And I played it with the same daughter that's going with me to China. She played it with me, and so she loved it too. So we have a good, memory of playing Walking Dead together and experiencing that story.
Nice. Yeah. That sounds like myself and my son playing Last of Us while we play like up to a point, and I'm like, I guarantee you that's the end of that episode on TV. So we'd play up to that and then watch the episode, and sure enough,
cool.
It's pretty obvious where the beats were, and that was a lot of fun. Good, yeah, and zombie thing too.
Zombies bring us all together.
They do. Zombies bring us together. Well, Jason, I know we've run a bit over, but it was so worth it because, wow, what a fun episode. Really enjoyed talking to you as always. And yeah, shoot me a note for any of these links that I did find this one, which I put at the beginning of the episode just because it had pieces of your music. It's very cool. Nice. So if you want to hear some of Jason's pieces, there you go. You can check them out there. I'll also put this in the show notes page as well. You can find my website there at money-act. You have to put the dash .com, and you can go take my character quiz, and that will lead you into a labyrinth of who you are as a movie character when it comes to your money. And then if you follow that, you'll be added to my email list, and you'll be notified of when my new community is coming out. And you will also be able to have access to all of my courses on investing, where we pair movies and money together. And really looking forward to getting this launched and get that community built up. It'll be a lot of fun. And on that note, I think that'll do it. Thank you again so much, Jason. I really appreciate it.
It's an honor to be here with you, Ryan. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing this community grow of yours. And I need help. Really interested to join it. So it'd be great.
Thanks, man. All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.